Salutations, future Twig. Past Twig here once again with another card call out for everyone. Today we're looking at another multicolored card, our first Gruul card, which is Dire Strange Rampage. 3 mana nets you a sorcery which says destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. If a land was destroyed this way, its controller may search their library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them in the battle onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Otherwise, its controller may search their library for a single basic land card in the event that you destroy an artifact or enchantment, and then put onto the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle, and then the best part, flashback for 5 mana. So this is a very versatile card. Obviously, red and green have a ton of different ways to destroy artifacts and enchantments in particular. However, I do think the ability to destroy a land and get out 2 lands, this Harrow-style effect, is very powerful. For those who don't know, another very common ramp card is Harrow, which is an instant speed sorcery for 3 mana, which basically just states that you can, and as an additional cost to Harrow, you have to sacrifice a land, and by doing that, you can get out 2 land cards onto the battlefield. Now, those lands for Harrow do come in untapped, so Dire Strange Rampage is a bit worse, being both sorcery speed and also it does not bring those lands in untapped. However, I think that having the ability to have this Harrow-style effect combined with the ability to remove artifacts and enchantments as needed makes this a very versatile card, and it can be recurred with the flashback mechanic, which is wonderful. So there's a ton of different decks I think could benefit from having this card in its 99. Getting on to it as well, it's also a very cheap card, only 20 cents currently because it was in the Innistrad Midnight Hunt, so it had like 8 copies of it printed, I swear to God, and so all of them are only about 20 cents. Moving on a little bit further, as you can see, it's in under 10,000 decks, which feels like a bit of a shame because this card does a lot of things that Gruul decks want to do, such as Gruul decks like Faldorn, Dreadwolf Herald. He wants you to be casting spells from exile or having lands enter the battlefield under his control, which this card does both because it's a flashback card, and on top of that, it has lands entering the battlefield because you can blow up your own lands. And in addition to that, you can, of course, discard this card if you want to as a flashback card to exile a different card with Faldorn's second ability. So there's a lot of ways where Dire Strange Rampage can just sit there in the graveyard and just work with a Faldorn deck in all sorts of manners. Not to mention that as Dire Strange Rampage has a ton of wolves in the front, it kind of synergizes with the whole concept of Faldorn's deck and him being the Wolf Herald. Moving on, you also have cards like Maria, Scholar of Antiquity. Now, she already does a lot of things for ramping, clear with a lot of non-token artifacts. However, what I love about Dire Strange Rampage is that A, you can sacrifice one of those artifacts to basically pull out and thin your deck. You can basically get 2 lands out of your deck, thins your deck, and makes it so you can continuously draw more artifacts and other cards to make more artifact tokens. Additionally, you can also use all the mana produced by those artifacts to pay for that expensive flashback cost and thin your deck even more. And even if not, again, Dire Strange Rampage is designed as a piece of removal. Your opponent does get a basic land out of it, but depending on what pod you play in, people don't always run the greatest number of basic lands, so again, very powerful effect. Moving on to the final archetype that this card works very well in, obviously given its Harrow-like ability, you have Mina and Den Wildborn or a landfall deck. There's a number of Gruul decks that care all about getting out as many lands out of the deck as possible into the battlefield. Mina and Den in particular have this ability to recur lands back to your hand so that creatures can gain trample. Obviously, you're only getting out basic lands with Dire Strange Rampage, but you still are going to have some basic lands in a Mina and Den Wildborn deck, and then it just gives you more, you can ramp faster. It's a piece of ramp in this deck, as well as being a versatile piece of removal if need, and because you're in a landfall deck, you're going to have a ton of lands on the field oftentimes, so paying for that 5 mana flashback cost is actually going to be more reasonable than in most other deck archetypes. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you very much for this card call, and have a wonderful day. Take care.